No, go ahead.
Welcome, everybody. This is like the awkward silence when you first start a webinar and you're waiting for people to join in. So don't worry, I'm not going to sing or anything embarrassing like that, but we're going to wait a few minutes to get people signed in. But I'm really excited to be a part of this panel, and we're just going to have an open, casual conversation about the industry. We got some great questions. You guys will see the chat feature. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to chat. We're going to do our best to get to as many questions as possible. Just kind of waiting a few minutes to get people chimed in. But if you want, you can let us know where you guys are calling in from. It's always cool to see where people are from. Should be able to see. Okay, yeah.
You can sing us a song, John, while we wait.
I thought you were going to sing for us, Jeff.
Ah, shoot. Didn't bring my singing voice today.
Eduardo, you up?
No, I passed.
Yeah, we need like the elevator music, right?
Let me get that for you guys.
To get us in, yeah. Well, we'll start in a few minutes. I do appreciate everyone showing up on time. This will be a great conversation.
And Anita, I believe we have the chat disabled. Is that
Yes.
how it was intended? Okay.
Yeah. So the Q&A is available as we speak.
Q&A.
Okay, because Rob was mentioning that the chat is disabled. So yes, Rob, the chat is disabled, but any questions you have, you can go to the Q&A and enter in. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry about that. All right. Well, I think we're probably pretty close. Let me just introduce. First of all, thank you guys for all joining. This is super cool. I'm honored to be here. My name is John Hildebrand. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm the founder of Hildy Homes, property management company. Also do a lot of content and education and whatnot, and huge in the advocacy world, all kinds of different things. But I work directly with Eduardo and Jeff on all of my listings. So we were chatting the other day and we're like, why don't we just have a open conversation, talk about the industry, get some questions from everybody, and kind of just have a very casual conversation about what we're seeing and what we're doing to get our listings to rank higher in the algorithm and get bookings. I'm sure that's why everyone is here. So I'm super excited. Let me just introduce you to everybody. We have Jeff from IntelHost and Eduardo from AngelHost. Sorry, that was a little tongue twister, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves and kind of tell them a little bit about themselves. Either one of you guys can go first.
Go for it, Eduardo.
Great. All right, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you, John, for the introduction. Thank you for organizing this webinar, this panel. My name is Eduardo, based in Montreal, Quebec. I'm the founder of AngelHost, and we basically help hosts and mostly property managers around the world get more out of their listings, whether it's through revenue management, taking care of the revenue management, taking care of the listings, all of those things. And yeah, very excited to be here. So that I have in the background is actually one of our properties in Turks and Caicos. I wish I was there today because it's pretty rainy here in Montreal. But yeah, happy to be here. And like you said, John, the idea of this webinar is, of course, to try to share as much information as possible to make it worth everybody's time, you know, and hopefully people will walk out of this with some good tips on what to do on their end to rank higher, to get better results. Absolutely.
Awesome. I guess it's my turn. Yeah, so super excited to be here, Jeff with IntelliHost. I actually got my toe in the water of vacation rentals about 3.5 years ago. We started a company called Loma Homes, and we created a vacation rental brand that was known for kind of theming and unique experiences. We built these crazy theme park homes in Orlando and Destin, Florida, and we built this tool internally to help us really optimize our performance on Airbnb. And we started to use that data. It started to work really well for us. And we decided, you know what, let's just make this a product for everybody. And so IntelliHost was born. So now my full-time gig is really with IntelliHost, and my partners continue to manage the Loma Homes side. But yeah, like Eduardo said, just excited to be here and help people glean some insights from what we've learned. We've got a lot of data that we're collecting, and hope we can help a lot of people with that.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited. I have like a million of my own questions, but I'll keep on track and get some of the questions that everybody is chiming in on. And like I said, feel free to ask us questions in the Q&A too, and we'll do our best to jump in. But I'll start it off with a couple of these questions, and we could all answer it, and anyone can just kind of chime in. But one of the questions I got the other day was, what key metrics should businesses track to measure success on the booking efforts, online booking efforts? Either one of you guys can go first.
Jeff, you want to go first this time?
Yeah, for sure. Now, when we started our vacation rental business, we started tracking the usual metrics, ADR, occupancy, and things like that. But those are what we call kind of reactive metrics. They're things that are a result of your efforts. What we like to track internally, and of course I'm biased because this is what we do with IntelliHost, but we like to track the proactive metrics, meaning the things that you can do to actually get more ADR, the things that drive more occupancy and things like that. So for anyone who's familiar with what's called a sales funnel or a booking funnel, it's the process of getting eyeballs on your listing and then converting those eyeballs. And there's really 4 steps that every guest takes in order to book your property on any OTA, whether it's Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com. And the first step, or the first obstacle, is just getting in search in the first place. That's called an impression. So we track impressions. Then once you've gotten in search, then it's about getting on first page of that search. So that's it's called a first page impression on Airbnb. Then after that, once you've gotten eyeballs, right, then you got to get clicked, and then you got to get booked. So we track those 4 things: impressions, first page impressions, clicks, and bookings. And then we like to benchmark each of those against the competition, so we know which step we need to focus on to, one, get the most eyeballs as possible, and then convert as many of those eyeballs as possible to actually check out and book. So those are the ones we track. But I don't know, I'm sure you can add to that, Eduardo.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with you, Jeff. I mean, looking at those is imperative. Our revenue management team also looks very much into what's happening in the future. Like, how does our pacing report look like? Pacing is basically saying, as of today, where was I as of today, October 11th, last year, in terms of my December bookings, my January bookings? What was my occupancy rate as of today? And that is a window into telling us if there's work to be done with a listing or with a property. If we see that as of today, our Christmas is already booked at 60%, whereas as of today last year, it was only at 30%. Well, that probably means that we kind of underpriced the property or something, right? Because we shouldn't be at 60% for Christmas just yet, especially if the booking window or the days before arrival, like how many days do people book in advance, is, let's say, 30 days. So you have to keep a very close eye on that so that you can determine also whether to panic or not to panic, right? We have a lot of clients that get very nervous ahead of time. They say, well, Thanksgiving Day is not still booked, not yet booked. What are we doing? Should we lower the price? Should we do this? Should we do that? And we always advise them, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at what is your pacing. Let's look at what is the average number of days that people book in advance, and based on that, make decisions. So I think at the end of the day, to maximize your bookings, you have to look at everything that Jeff mentioned, right? Well, what is my click rate? How many times do I show up on the results page? But you also have to determine, when is it time to take action, and when are things okay? There's no need to panic, and you just have to hold on and wait a little bit longer, to make any changes to your listing.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like you say, you got to take all the emotion out, right? And go on data and stats. The emotion will get you in trouble. Go off the data, you're probably in good hands. That's cool. Good stuff. Speaking of algorithms, what factors search in the algorithms do you guys consider when you want to rank your properties? I'm sure that's like a huge question.
Yeah, we get that a lot in IntelliHost, obviously. So we've actually we've got thousands and thousands of properties on IntelliHost that we collect data on, and so we're able to do a lot of testing and data science on what's actually driving people's first page impression rate. So I say first page impression rate, let me just define that a little bit. It's the percentage of time you appear on first page. It's very similar for those that have heard of rank. The only difference is a rank is telling you kind of like what position you are in the total search result. And that rank information has to be scraped from the public page. First page impression rate comes straight from Airbnb, and it's the percentage of time you got on first page of the total amount of times you got searched or you appeared in search. So what we did is we actually took we've done a bunch of studies, kind of A/B tests on what drives first page impression rate. And we focus on that one because, like, again, it comes straight from Airbnb, and so we try to make sure that it's kind of from the horse's mouth. But what we did is we kind of compiled a list of things that do help your rank and things that don't. There's a lot of myths out there. Unfortunately, online, I've seen some crazy ones that we won't talk about, but of things that like, oh yeah, people just swear this helps your conversion rate, or I'm sorry, helps your first page impression rate. And the data just hasn't supported it from what we've seen. So I'll start with the things that don't help, and then we'll talk about the things that do. So one of the things that I've heard is emojis in titles. Actually, I've heard that this actually hurts your search rank because it's against Airbnb's content policy, all these things. Well, it turns out it doesn't really make a difference at all. So emojis in titles, don't worry about that. Frequent changes. This is a big one. I've heard all the time as people say, well, if you go in and change a calendar every day, or if you change a little like period and remove a period in your description every day, that will tell Airbnb that you're a more active host and get you more ranking. Unfortunately, we just haven't seen that in the data. That doesn't seem to make any difference. We also haven't seen a big difference with keywords. Different, like, you know, if you add pool or a hot tub and you're listing more, you know, you can get ranked better. Haven't seen that one as much. Description length doesn't seem to make a big difference. Whether you have a guest book or not. People think because Airbnb has their own, like, you can upload your own guest book in their system, that maybe they reward you for having that. That doesn't seem to be driving anything. And then cancellation policy, there may be slight benefits from a more flexible cancellation policy, but overall the difference is quite small. So I wouldn't worry about cancellation policy giving you a better rank or a worse rank. Now let's talk about things that do help, because that's what matters. One of the biggest things, and I hate to admit this, but as far as correlated with first page impression rate, price is probably the number one thing that really like drives that first page impression rate. And it's the quickest way to hack, quote unquote, hack the algorithm, is just drop your price. Now, that's the last thing you would ever want to actually do for your listing, right? You want to get the highest price that you can. But if we're talking about what drives ranking, price is probably one of the number one things. Second thing is your review count. So we see a huge correlation between the number of reviews you have and your rank or your first page impression rate on Airbnb. Now, just having more reviews doesn't matter if they're all 2-star reviews, right? You still have to make sure that they're 5-star reviews, and that leads to the second point, which is review score. So the most properties with the most, or sorry, the properties with the most 5-star reviews do rank the best. So those are kind of the big top two. Then there's some other more nuanced ones that we've been doing some research on recently that I want to cover. One of the things Brian Chesky said recently in an article is that they're going to start rewarding people who cover the cleaning fee or don't have a cleaning fee. So we actually ran this one yesterday, and we looked at all the properties that have a cleaning fee and those that don't. And so let me open up my analysis here. So for those that have a cleaning fee, the average first page impression rate is about 44%. For those that do not have a cleaning fee, the average first page impression rate is 48%. So pretty significant increase by removing the cleaning fee. For service fee, so this is where Airbnb's service fee, you can cover that for the guest if you want. So for those that do have a service fee, 43% average first page impression rate. For those that remove that or cover it for the guest, 49% first page impression rate. So again, pretty significant increase there. So those are things that help your first page impression rate. And then I just have a couple more.
Doesn't help your wallet.
New listings. So
one, right?
within the first, what's that?
I said that one doesn't help your wallet too much on that one.
No, it doesn't, but you can put those fees into your nightly rate.
Okay.
You can still kind of compensate for it, but
Yeah.
it seems like there's a benefit to just not having it as an extra fee. We've also seen that your conversion rate increases dramatically if you can remove as many fees at the end as possible, and that's self-explanatory. But yeah, we don't recommend that you just swallow those fees. We recommend that you just put them in the nightly rate, so it's a little more transparent. New listings. So within the first 14 days of your listing going live, you see the most kind of search benefit. Airbnb does seem to be rewarding listings that are new in ranking. So that's a big one. Photo count. I've been seeing this one circulate a lot online, but they say that don't add more than like 25 photos because you're overwhelming customers and you won't convert as well. That's not what we're seeing in the data. What we're seeing is that Airbnb does seem to be giving search credit for people who have more photos. We looked at people who added, I think, at least 10 photos, and those that did that saw a pretty significant increase in first page impression rate. So that's, I recommend more photos, the better. I think Airbnb allows up to 100. And I don't think it's going to overwhelm customers. If they get bored seeing your photos, they'll just back out and book your property, right? Just more information is better on that. Wish list additions. I put this in at the bottom of my list because, well, near the bottom of my list, because wish list additions does have a correlation with first page impression rate, but it's a really low, it's a very slight correlation. We're talking to the tune of like 500 wish list additions for 1% increase in first page impression rate. So does it help? Yes, but very, very little. And then finally, we kind of alluded to this, Eduardo, with having different, being on different listing platforms, but time since last booking. So the more time you go without booking, your ranks or your first page impression rates does seem to drop. And so you want to make sure it's kind of that hamster wheel. You want to make sure you keep getting bookings, because the longer you go without having the booking, it seems like the harder it is to get a booking. So that's my list. I hope I didn't bore you with that, but that's what we've seen so far in the data.
It's very useful, and of course I agree with everything you said, Jeff. What we have seen, and we help manage about 1,200 properties right now, so we have also a lot of data in terms of what works and what doesn't. We know that at the end of the day, what the OTAs are looking for is conversion, right? When Brian says, put your cleaning fees into your normal rate, it's because they know that at the end of the day, that's going to convert better, right? They want people to convert more. So what we've seen time and time again is that the higher your conversion rate, the higher you will rank. It becomes a virtuous circle, right? We are always very careful when we launch a listing, or we sometimes relaunch a listing because it's been a long time since they had their last booking. So we figure it's better to lose those 10 reviews that we have, because it's simply getting no traction. And sometimes it's better to relaunch a listing because of that artificial boost that you get in the first 14 days. But what's critical during those first 14 days is to have all your stars aligned. Because when you launch a new listing and you think, oh, well, I'm just going to start with my iPhone pictures and I'll get some professional photos later on, or I'll just put some base pricing at the beginning and then I'll implement my dynamic pricing. Well, you're missing out on all of those free impressions that Airbnb, that Booking.com, that Vrbo are giving you, because you're not demonstrating to the algorithm that you can convert well. So for us, it's all about tracking that conversion and making sure that our listings get enough bookings every, if we know that there's a booking every 7 days, we monitor that very, very closely. Like I said, to the point that if we see that after all of our efforts, there's no conversion, we sometimes deactivate a listing and activate a new one. It's kind of like our line of last resort. We don't usually do that very often, but it could get to that as well, right? So, but it's all about conversion from what we've seen in every single platform.
Wow, there was a lot of nuggets in both of that conversation right there. And my brain was like, okay, I like that. We kind of talked on this a little bit, but is there a couple like best practices for dominating the search? Like if you had to pick like your ones to really focus on, is there ones that you guys are seeing like, hey, if you're going to spend money or time or effort, this is where you should focus in the industry as a whole?
Yeah, in our opinion, what we've seen matters the most. Like Jeff said at the beginning, pricing matters, right? And the fact that to say pricing matters doesn't mean that you have to be the cheapest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Normally, the ones that price the lowest are going to be the first ones booked sometimes. Okay, they're out of the way, but it's not about pricing the lowest. It's about pricing at the right level, because if you don't price it at the right level and you put your prices too high, then again, whether someone is looking to book for next month or for 6 months from now, the algorithm is going to say, I presented John's listing and I presented already 15 times and it hasn't been clicked even, right? So why is that? And most times, more often than not, is because it's going to be a question of pricing, or it's going to be a question also of the pictures, right? We're also very, very careful with the pictures that we choose, especially that hero image. It happens very often in Orlando, for example, the Orlando market. Every single home has a pool, right? So what does everybody do? They put that pool picture as the first picture. Well, try to change a little bit. Maybe if it's a themed home, like Jeff was mentioning, maybe try to get that picture of the Mickey Mouse room and at the same time see the pool in the background or something, right? Try to do something different so that you can get those clicks. So we pay a lot of attention to title, pictures, and pricing, right? Which are things that we can control on behalf of our clients. But of course, having good reviews and all of those good things and getting back to people quickly does make a difference. That's from our perspective.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, I'll phrase the answer to that question in kind of like a what would I do differently if I could start over, knowing what I know now. And I would say the customers we have that are they're doing the best, and I'm talking about like double or triple their competition. They just have the most 5-star reviews, and it's getting those 5-star reviews is a lot of what Eduardo said, is pricing right, getting the great pictures and all of those things. But if you want to get the most 5-star reviews the fastest way possible, what I would probably have done if I could have done it differently is I would have listed on one platform to come out of the gate. So I would have listed on just Airbnb with my new property. We're talking about new properties here, right? And I would probably, because I'm more of a numbers guy, like I can kind of take the emotion out of maybe having a party or two at my house or something. But I would probably do like a one night minimum stay and knock my price below the competition, maybe 10, 15, maybe even 20%, just to get as many bookings into the property as possible with that first grace period the Airbnb gives you, and prove to them that you can convert really, really, really well. Because what that's going to do is you're going to get loads of bookings, and the more bookings, the more reviews. And if you're priced a little bit lower than the competition, the value proposition is better. And so you're going to get tons of 5-star reviews right off the bat. Then once your property starts to hit about 27 reviews, on average, what we see is you've achieved about 90% of the search benefit that you can get from reviews. This is totally going to be different based on your area. If you're in a smaller area where people don't have a ton of reviews, then that number could be smaller. But what we see is about 27 reviews, you've kind of like gotten 90% of the search benefit. And so that's when you can start to be a little bit more picky, and you can start, increasing your night minimums or whatever works best for your property. But I would consider those first 3 months as like an investment in the long term, if you're willing, and if you're cleaner, and if your property manager is willing to put up with that one night minimum. And of course, you're going to have to be careful with parties where you maybe set a 25-year, set an age limit of 25, and you only allow instant booking for customers that are well reviewed and things like that. I think that's kind of like best practice, in my opinion, of getting yourself to the top of the search algorithm and performing better long term.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. I've done a ton of testing myself, especially with launching, and as an Airbnb ambassador, I do get some insight from them quite a bit, and reviews are just gold. And especially like you said, in the first 14, 30 days, getting as many bookings and reviews as possible is just, it's like building a foundation, right? You want a solid foundation before you're off to the races.
Exactly.
Just to
and with
touch
regards
on
to the
that,
reviews, John, just to add on the reviews, one of the things that we use the reviews for is actually in determining our titles. So sometimes we just put all of our reviews. You can literally go into ChatGPT and say, these are my top 10 reviews. Could you please suggest a title? All right. And then because it's going to extract what is most valuable for people, right? Sometimes you get a lot of interesting nuggets in those reviews saying, oh, we love how close it was to this amenity or this other amenity. And then we put that on the title, and that helps us get a higher click-through rate. Yeah,
that like Eric just said right here, that's gold. That was a gold little gem right there you just dropped. Just to add on, both of you guys were kind of talking on this a little bit, but Jay asked the question, when you guys are doing testing, have you done testing on last minute discounts? And should I increase my price on dynamic pricing and then go into like Airbnb and do a last minute discount? Do you guys have anything to comment on that question?
It's a great question. We need to do some analysis on that because we've just started pulling in some additional data that allows us to actually collect that. Before, we didn't know which properties were providing special discounts. So the question is, if my price stays neutral, do I get a boost in rank for having a special discount? And I don't know, but I think it's a great question, and we'll do a video on it. We do a bunch of videos on our YouTube and Instagram. So whoever asked the question, if you want to follow, and sorry, I didn't mean to be a pitch, but if you want to follow us on Instagram, we'll do a video on that. We'll do one of our next videos, and we'll post the results. That'd be cool.
Yeah. And I can tell you that our team does that. They don't do it often. We don't necessarily need to get to that point, because if you monitor your bookings ahead of time, and you start sometimes, doing some lowering your price a little bit as you get closer to the check-in date when your property is empty, you don't necessarily have to do that. But we have indeed sometimes, as a last resort, go and increase the prices and then apply a special promotion on Booking.com, for example. At least on Booking.com, we have seen that working. Eventually the algorithms will smarten up to that, and they will realize that it's just an artificial discount that you're offering, right? But as long as it works, and it has worked for us sometimes, I'm not gonna, like I said, it's not our number one strategy, but it's one of those things that we do. It's quite time consuming, and that's why we don't want to get to that point, but we have done it, and I can tell you that at least for us, it has worked on Booking.com.
Cool, love that. This is a question that I always think about all the time, and I see about it in social media all the time, right? Do you guys have any tips or suggestions on effective marketing strategies to attract more bookings, especially during the off season, non-peak season? And just
we do. It depends on the market, of course, but for example, we manage quite a few properties in Miami. And of course, Miami, renting something short-term in Miami, September, October, November, hurricane season, it's really hard. So what we typically do is many months in advance, we do not allow for very short-term bookings in the Miami market. And we only open the calendar with a good discount for 30-day bookings. So what we're trying to do ahead of time is to secure those long mid-term rentals during that low season, right? After a certain period of time when we realize, okay, we weren't able to book it midterm, then we start going into looking into opening the calendar for shorter stays or lowering the price. Again, it all comes down to looking at your pacing report. You have to pay close attention to how your bookings are for the low season to determine, once again, if you have to lower your price or not. But it is true that for low season compared to high season, with low season, we tend to be more conservative. So with high season, we know we can always put a slightly higher price, because if it doesn't book right now, it will book later down the road. We don't take those risks with low season. From the get-go, we try to price exactly at the level that we think it should rent at. We don't try to play any games and try to get it booked at a higher rate. Just go and try to secure those bookings as early as possible. That's our strategy for low season. Jeff?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I was just going to say that the way we think about it, and you said it in better words, but we think about it as in peak season, you're optimizing revenue by optimizing for nightly rate, because there's enough demand that you can charge any length of stay and pretty much get it booked. But it's all about optimizing for nightly rate. But for down season, it's about optimizing for occupancy, and that's going to give you the best revenue because, like you said, if you have to apply a discount for long-term stays, that's one of the things we see working for our customers is during that down season, they offer, pretty heavy discounts for length of stay. That typically ends up getting them the most revenue. And like you said, you can't really be greedy in down season because there's just not enough customers to book your property, especially right in today's market where you've got more supply than ever. And so I think you have to be a little bit more aggressive on price to get it booked.
Awesome. Okay, a couple more questions. Let's see. Where am I? What do you guys foresee as the future trends in online booking for the hospitality industry as a whole? Great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think more and more, and that's what we're seeing, the algorithms are getting better at understanding what you want, what you like, right? Mm-hmm. So the same way that a TikTok channel starts presenting to you the type of videos that you're interested in, just based on how many seconds you're spending on something. It's the same thing with Airbnb, with Booking.com. They start understanding what type of pictures are you attracted to, what type of price range are you actually looking into. So it's more important than ever to really have good listings, right? Listings that truly highlight the strengths of your property. So if you have a beautiful, beachfront view, you have to highlight that. You have to make sure that your pictures are the right pictures. You have to make sure that your title mentions the things that people are looking for, because the algorithms are going to become smarter and smarter. Because again, what does Airbnb want? What do the OTAs want? They want higher conversions, and they will get higher conversions through personalization. And so you want to make sure that you have the right listing. So once again, whenever you launch a listing, whatever listings you have live, you have to be very careful that they're properly optimized, not to miss out on any opportunities there.
Solid. Jeff, you have anything to add?
Yeah, just to answer the question of kind of overall, what is the market going to look like? I can't say that I'm an expert in this field. Rather, I'm just kind of looking at, I am a data guy, but I'm not an expert on economics and what's going to happen with the economy. But what I can say is, from what I've read and what I've researched, we're just in a glut of supply right now. Booking demand is actually quite strong. Travel is still a big thing and growing. So the world has not stopped traveling. They haven't stopped booking Airbnbs. As maybe some media outlets would have you believe. And what's happening is that there's just more supply than ever. And there is a slight decrease in some more saturated markets. But what we're also starting to see is that those that maybe got in a little too late, or aren't optimized, or having to just kind of drop out. You have to remember that in this market, there's a large percentage of the population that is not doing this as an investment, or they're doing it more as like a second home that they kind of want to rent out part-time, and they're hoping to get something close to Disney World so they can take their family there. And if it makes money, great, but really they just kind of want it to break even, right? You got a lot of those people, and if they're starting to lose their shirt on their quote unquote investment, they're just going to drop it because they're not as invested as you might be at treating this as an investment. So if you're willing to stick through it, I think a lot of the casual investors or the hobby investors are going to kind of fall out of this market, and demand and supply always normalize. So I think we've had a glut in supply. It'll come back down. Demand's still climbing. And over the next 2 or 3 years, I think even over the next 1 year, I think it'll start to come back in a big way.
Yeah, I love that you just said that. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, John, please.
I was going to say, I love that you just touched on that, because like I preach it all the time to new hosts or investors or whatnot. It's like, you really got to have the mindset that the days of just throwing, Costco furniture up and just basic listings, no offense, are long gone. Like that industry is on its way completely out. Like if you're going to treat this as like a business and like hospitality at the top of the list and making sure the amenities and customer service, you're checking off all these boxes and you're really treating it like a business, you're going to crush it. The Airbnb bus, I don't believe in any of that. It's like, I just think more hosts need to step up their game. And we're just like what you were saying is like, we're just in that transition period where a lot of hosts have to just step up their game. And I hate to say it, but we got kind of lazy there for a while during this gold rush, right? So updating your listings and just, elevating your whole entire hosting to the next level is, I think that's just where we're at, in my opinion.
And I think the biggest challenge, John, for those listening to us that are property managers, they know this very well, that they say, well, I understand that, but the owner of the house doesn't, so I understand the price need to be set up at a certain level, but the owner doesn't, right? The owner wants a certain rate, the owner wants certain results. And I would just share this with everybody. We understand that, we see that day to day. We speak with, we have hundreds of property management companies as clients, so we hear from them every day exactly that. And what I can give as an advice is always try to continuously educate your clients with data, right? Show them the market data, show them the real numbers, and get them to understand that if they're serious about this, they have to, they have to follow your pricing recommendations. They have to follow your decoration recommendations if you have some, in terms of what to do. Because truly, as time goes by, like Jeff said, travel is there, people renting short-term rentals, that will continue to happen, but it will become more and more competitive, right? Yeah. And then people will obviously, and the expectations from clients and guests will continue to go up. So it's more important than ever to educate owners on that. And as a property manager, only take on owners that understand that and are willing to follow your recommendations, right?
Yeah, and that's where companies like you guys and IntelliHost come in handy. Like I literally before this had a meeting with one of my homeowners that thought certain things differently, and we had to pull up a bunch of data and show them hard facts and really let them know like, hey, there's a trust factor here. Like I'm the expert. You have to kind of take our lead, but don't just go off my word. Let's pull up data. Here's hard facts. Here's what your neighbors are doing. Here's the competition. Like getting a homeowner to trust you is one of the hardest steps. And then building that relationship and keeping that relationship, you got to have data. A guest is just another side of the business. But definitely don't forget about your homeowners. That's like, I see it all the time. We have to constantly educate our homeowners. Some homeowners will be like, hey, we're hands off. You're the expert. Do whatever you got to do. We trust you, right? But some you got to keep giving them data. So good point on that. That's really cool to hear. Let's see. Got a couple questions in here. Oh yeah, I love this one because we were talking about the algorithm being so important and reviews being so important, but here's like the catch 22 or the dilemma that I'm currently facing myself too. It's like more and more people are trying to build a brand and identity and doing more direct bookings. So you're doing direct bookings, you're taking that away from the platforms, which we all know that process. So could you guys talk a little bit about your ranking on example like Airbnb and getting the direct bookings, and how do you think that's going to affect? Do you need both of them?
It's a great question. I would say, I don't know, Eduardo, if you wanted to answer this one first, but there's kind of when you separate the search process on Airbnb into those 4 steps, you kind of realize that when you book on other platforms, or let's say on direct, for example, all you're doing is you're blocking off dates for Airbnb to put you in search. Now, that's probably not a big deal for you if you're booked because, well, you're booked. That was the whole goal. So we haven't seen any data yet to suggest that if you're booking on other platforms or if your calendar is blocked, that it's hurting your search rank. Meaning, I don't think Airbnb is punishing your search rank because your calendar is more booked. It's just stopping the eyeballs that are searching for that date range from seeing you. So you're getting less volume of search, but you're but you're likely still appearing at the same rate on first page. So in my opinion is go for it. Like, get as many direct bookings as you can, because I think the benefits of doing that are offset, you know, the downside. So that's my opinion. I don't know, Eduardo, if you have a different opinion.
Yeah, well, I kind of agree with you in the sense that if you can get a direct booking, go for it. But we've seen some owners and property managers make some errors that we believe you have to be careful with. For example, they say, well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to block my high season directly, so I'm going to just block it off, you know, and I'm not going to show it on Airbnb. I'm not going to show it on Booking. And for us, that's like a big risk to take. You know, like you're missing out on all of those impressions and all of those potential bookings. Someone asked here on the Q&A, you know, what do we consider to be a long time between bookings? Because like you said, Jeff, if there's a lot of time between bookings, we start seeing how it becomes a vicious circle. We get lower rankings, and lower rankings means less bookings, and less bookings means lower rankings. So we do like to see a fair amount of activity in the account. So we normally like to see a booking, depends on the market and depends on the time of the year. But if we don't see a booking in 15 days, we're extremely concerned, right? That to us raises an automatic flag. There's something there. And of course, if we have a lot of direct bookings, it's true that Airbnb won't promote us as much because we're not as valuable for them and for the inventory, and because the algorithm doesn't really know how well that property does because it's getting very few. So it's a catch-22. It's a little bit difficult. I know that direct bookings bring a lot of benefits, and we would never prevent any of our clients, and we actually help them get more direct bookings. But the truth of the matter is that we will always depend on OTA. So just do as you do normally. You know, try to get your bookings from wherever you get them from. Just don't do things like blocking a calendar because you think you will be able to book them, you know, and prevent that booking from coming from Airbnb or Booking.com or Vrbo.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, I'd say that the other downside of booking on another property is just that the fact that review that they're going to leave is now on another platform, so that review isn't going to benefit you, because reviews is such an important part of ranking. That ranking is going to be watered down a little bit if you've got those reviews spread out across different platforms. So that's something to think about. And to answer your question, Eduardo, or not your question, but the question that was asked, how many days is too long? When we did the analysis, the search ranking kind of bottomed out. We're talking about averages here, so it's going to depend on your area, but by about 30 days, it kind of lost. You've kind of deflated the your search ranking from not having a booking. So you don't really fall off of page 15 usually until after like 90 days. But I think, yeah, to Eduardo's point, I think if you haven't been booked after 15 days, it's probably time to do something.
So that's a good point on this question. Somebody was asking that they book direct. I can't find it right now, but if they book direct for like a 3-month stay, which is a big trend right now, a month, 3 month, should they maybe snooze their Airbnb listing so it's off for a while during, and then when they reopen it, maybe the snooze will turn back on? Because 3 months with no window for booking, it's a long time, right?
Yes, I hesitate to snooze a listing. We haven't done any research yet on what that does to your listing. But there's some, just to clarify, in case anyone's thinking that if you snooze your listing and then turn it back on, it's the same as delisting and listing a new listing, because Eduardo mentioned that sometimes they will turn a listing off and then list a new one. That's very different than just snoozing and turning it back on. That's not going to give you that new search rank benefit. So if there's anyone thinking that that's going to kind of, once you turn it back on, you're going to get that new search rank benefit, I don't think that's the case. I don't know. I wish I had a better answer as far as like, is it better to just snooze it? My personal feeling is that no, I wouldn't snooze it, because you're still getting some traffic. Like, it just depends on what date people are searching. And yeah, I don't think you want to miss out on the traffic that's happening while it's snoozed. Even if the next 3 months is blocked, people are still looking for specific holiday timeframes farther out. So that's my opinion.
Yep.
I agree, Jeff. And we do not snooze any listings. We do relaunch when we don't see any traction. And sometimes it has happened when we come out of a very long-term booking, let's say a 5-6 month booking, that listing just doesn't get any traction. And that's one of the cases where sometimes we have had to relaunch a listing. But as a best practice, I would not recommend snoozing a listing. Just keep it up. You'll always get some bookings 4 months out, 5 months out, and your listing will continue to have some traction, and all will be good.
Cool. This is the last pre-submitted question, and then you guys will jump into the Q&A. I've been kind of jumping into some of the Q&A, but if you guys have more questions, feel free to ask in the Q&A, and we'll start going through that as well. But one of the pre-submitted questions was, what tools does Airbnb give to optimize your listings? And I know we were talking about this earlier about, the insights and the data on just Airbnb alone. You guys want to chime in on that, how to optimize your listings on Airbnb?
Yeah. So IntelliHost actually pulls your data straight from Airbnb. So the data technically that you need is there. The one thing that I want to call out or caveat is that the way Airbnb is surfacing it is a little bit misleading. And what I mean by that is when you go into your Airbnb, Eduardo, do you have that screenshot by chance that you were looking?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to share that.
Absolutely.
When you go into your performance dashboard on Airbnb, you'll see this. This is some of the information that you can obtain just looking at Airbnb. But what they'll do is they'll show you kind of this data charted out. And if you look at one of the dates, let's say you're looking at yesterday, you're looking at October 10th. Well, what Airbnb is actually showing you is how many views or clicks you got when someone searched the date of October 10th. You're not seeing how many views you got total for any future day on October 10th. Most people assume that's what you're seeing. And the reason that's a problem is because when you change something and you want to see if it's improving your listing, you can't actually go look at your data. You can pull all your future data and see how much traffic you're getting for those future dates. But if you change something, the traffic on all your future dates will increase or decrease as a result of your change. And so it's very difficult to understand if your change is helping or hurting. And so that's why we built IntelliHost really in the first place, is when we realized that Airbnb was organizing the data that way. We had to actually collect all of our future trip date data every day and then calculate the net increase or net amount of clicks that we got for all of our future click dates and put that in our dashboard so we could understand, okay, we made the change on this day. Did our total views go up or did it go down? And that's you have to make sure you understand. So the data is technically here. Yeah. Just know what you're looking at so that you aren't misled in that way.
Exactly. If I may add, actually on the next slide, we have it in case you're wondering where you get this information from. On booking.com, they have an analytics tab, and then they have a ranking dashboard, and you can actually get quite a bit of information from there. So yeah, we actually use IntelliHost, right? And one of the reasons we use IntelliHost is because going back to sharing data with owners and being very visual about it, is that there's some nice graphs and nice reports that help people understand the importance of what is driving the ranking, what is driving the results. But we do keep a very close eye on all those metrics that Jeff mentioned at the beginning in terms of the average number of times that we show up on the first page, the average number of times that people click, and we monitor those results on a monthly basis. If I can just share with you, and this could be actually interesting information for anyone on this call, because these are actually our real numbers. And this graph shows you here, this on the light green, it shows you the percentage of times that we show up on the first page when they search for our properties. This is across all of our properties, like I said, more than 1,000. So we know that if we are around 45 to 50%, we seem confident. The numbers that we get, the averages from Airbnb are listed down here. So we are way above what we see to be the market average. And we also monitor very closely this one, the click-through rate, the dark blue because that's what we can influence also the most. The light blue or green, whatever color this is mostly influenced by, you know, overall how good our reviews are, all the things that we said. But this one, the dark blue, is basically how good is our title, how good is our pricing, you know, how good is all of those things. And we keep a very, very close eye on those to determine if there's some changes that are required on our listings, if something needs to be modified. It varies by market.
Those are good numbers, man.
You know?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, I've seen a lot of numbers, but your conversion rate's like double what I see on most customers. So good work.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's having that data, right? At the end of the day, it's acting based on data, and that's and for us, and that's data that we constantly communicate to our clients, right? Which in turn they communicate to their owners to say, listen, you need to make these changes if you want to get these results. If not, here's your conversion data, and that's what you need to change.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to jump into a few of the Q&A. Let's see. How do you guys determine accurate booking lead time? When I go to Airbnb and Price Labs, it all seems to be different.
We use, sorry, go ahead, Jeff. Yeah, we use two tools to determine lead time. On the one hand, we use a dynamic pricing tool called Price Labs, and from there we actually get some pretty accurate lead time from the market. We also get information from another supplier called Key Data that aggregates information from multiple property managers. So sometimes there are discrepancies between one tool and the other. So we have to sometimes just figure out which is the most accurate one, or we simply take an average of the two, or we compare versus our own data from the previous year, right? That's how we do it. Go ahead, Jeff.
And one of the things that might explain the difference is it depends on how far you're looking back. So like, for example, if you go to Price Labs, they have a lead time metric if you buy one of their market dashboards. But if you select last 365 days, meaning looking at all the bookings that happened in the last year, what was the average lead time? That's a very different number than looking at the last 7 days. Because you know, different time periods book further out in advance. So some of that discrepancy is just knowing what you're looking at and how they're pulling the number so that you can align those things. So we've actually used for lead time stuff, we've actually looked at Price Labs. You can look at Key Data. Key Data's got some great stuff because they're connecting directly to the PMS. So Airbnb, a lot of their data is only looking 90 days into the future. So I'm not sure if that's affecting maybe why Airbnb's lead time metric may be different than someone else's, but it's just a thought there.
Yep. A few people were asking me just the technical. Yes, this will be recorded and we're going to put it on the YouTube. And then everyone who's on this email, we will send you guys a follow-up email with everybody on this call's links. And so you guys can check out where to watch their videos, because there's a lot of great questions in here. We might have to do round two, that some of these questions might need some more work in here for sure. What is the best way to see click-through rates and impressions for Airbnb? Sorry. I think we kind of talked about that a little bit with the Insights tab, IntelHost, sign up with my AngelHost, you know, shameless plugs, but all three of those would be a great start. Like I said, I work with all you guys and I feel like we pull stuff from everywhere. The more data and sifting through it, the better. But I think we talked about that quite a bit, unless you guys had something to add.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, you know, if you have one listing, you can just go directly into Airbnb, you know, and get the data. It's once you start having more listings, or you need a better visualization because you're sharing it with your customers. So that's why we use IntelliHost, for example. Again, shameless plug, but it's true. You know, we do use Jeff's tool because it helps our revenue management team get better views on the data, aggregate data for multiple properties. And when it comes time to sharing that data with the property management companies we work with, well, again, nice data, you know, makes for better communication and convincing owners on what they need to do or need to change, right? So So yeah.
Jake asked a great question, and my background is photography, so I'm always trying to figure out this question. So like, what is the best option for, I know it's a broad question, but Jake says, what is the best option for like the hero image? Is there a way to pull stats? You know, if everyone's posting a pool photo, like what's my other hero image? I know that's a big question, but like any tips?
This is
Yeah.
truly something that I think artificial intelligence is perfectly suited for, right? Because with artificial intelligence, you could figure that out. But what I can tell you is that after 5 years in this business and thousands of listings, we still haven't figured out what is the best possible picture. So what we do is we monitor the performance of whatever hero image we put in the first place, and we don't set and forget. You would be impressed to see how many times we change that hero image, right? There's always more than one good picture for whatever property. So if someone was asking, well, what about if my properties are up in the mountains? Or what if, well, it depends on who your competitors are. It depends on the characteristics of your property. But testing, I think, is very important. Testing and trying a picture after another, and then saying, I wonder what happens. Maybe for me, this image is incredible. Perfect lighting, perfect angle. I can't think of any other picture that is better than this. Well, that's based on your opinion, right? Yeah. Maybe someone else thinks different than you. So testing. We have a team that literally all they do all day is listing optimization, right? Just constantly rotate through different images until they get to the right one.
Yep.
Jeff,
I couldn't agree more. You couldn't agree with more with that, because I could say, and we've seen some anecdotal data that says like the great room generally has a better click rate than the bedroom. But the reality is, depends on the size of your property, depends on your location, it depends on so many factors that it's very personal. And that's why, shameless plug, IntelliHost has the A/B tester. It's called Change Tracker, and we just pick up anytime you've made a change. And so the whole point of that is so you can test different cover photos, and then we measure your click rate before and after that cover photo, so that you can pick what's best for you, because it really depends on what's best for your specific property. Yeah,
and just to add on that, I've been a photographer 25 years at this point, and I used to shoot for Airbnb, right? And major high-end architectural magazines and whatnot. And like finding that hero image for the cover of the magazine or the brochures was a big deal. We would get, all different types of people to chime in on what image they liked. But one thing I will say is hire a professional. Trust me, the algorithm knows if your house has been shot on an iPhone versus a professional camera. And I think the algorithm's only going to get better and better. So hiring a professional, getting super high-end quality photos with the right angles and not distorted, like all those things will make you stand out. And just, in my opinion too, like go through the search. And if, like we all said this earlier, like if every single person is posting a mountain photo and it's a perfect blue sky, maybe you want to do a winter snowy day of the cabin. Or if everyone's doing the pool, maybe you want the inside of your house. So like anything to stop someone's eye from scrolling a million miles an hour through listings will definitely help you. But yeah, great stuff there.
Yeah. Can I add one thing too to that? We've been doing some research on split screen cover photos. And because people want to know, like, does the split screen help or not? And
like a collage?
Again, it's total, yeah, the collage thing. I see it a lot. It totally depends on how well it's done. So if you try to slam too many pictures in a collage, it hurts your click rate for sure, because nobody's gonna like stop just so that they can like zoom in on your photo and try to see every little photo within your one photo. It's not helpful. But if you can actually make that photo, if that collage makes it look more professional and intentional, it can help your click rate. We did a recent study with our own properties. We actually made the same type of collage with all of them, and we did see a small increase in click rate from doing that. But again, just because you split a screen and put 4 on the same image does not mean that it's going to help your click rate. In some cases, it will hurt your click rate, but it has to be done right. It has to be done professionally. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, good point.
And
Man, this
again,
is good.
that's where testing plays a big role, right? We
Yeah.
are testing, for example, with our properties in Orlando. We know that one of the key elements that people were asking about, inquiring about, is how far are you from Hollywood studios? How far are you from Disney? So now we have in one of the 5 images, one of them is actually a map that shows where the location of the property is and the driving distance to the different main attractions. So I cannot tell you yet how that is going to work out because we just implemented that recently. But again, we are monitoring the performance and doing some tests to see if that is actually going to increase our click-through rate for those properties specifically.
Yeah, and to double down on the map, I just started doing kind of recently an actual drawing floor plan of my house. So it's the full to spec, you can go to Fiverr or something, and they draw the exact layout of the house with the exact furniture and gives you the whole floor plan. I don't have hard data on it, but it sure seems to help with guests understanding the flow of the house and the actual layout of the house. And people like to click on it anyways because it's a cool little graphic. So I agree with you. I think those graphics, if done correctly, it's super helpful.
Yeah.
All right, we'll jump into a few more questions, and I know we probably should wrap up here soon, but everyone's sticking around. So it's super cool for all you guys sticking around and asking all these great questions. Like, I could probably stay on this call forever because I'm learning a ton myself. You guys have an answer for this. What should I target for the booking rate on Airbnb? I guess that's probably a very hard question to answer depending on markets and house.
Or maybe the question refers to the average conversion rate that you should aim for. And maybe, Jeff, you have some data on that could be useful to share.
Yeah, on average, our customers are converting about 1% of their clicks into nights booked. So if you're around there, then I'd say you're probably doing okay. If you're below that, then you probably need to look at how to improve that. Now, I'll quickly just mention 4 things that will hurt your conversion rate. Like when we look at conversion rate, it's usually there's like 4 things that'll kill you. And if you're doing any one of these, like if you just stop doing them, you'll be fine. But professional photos, we've hit that on the head over and over again, but make sure you have professional photos. Make sure you don't have additional guest fees. So any guest past 10, for example, you're charging an additional rate. That'll kill your conversion rate. If you have a pre-booking message turned on, and what that means is when they go to check out, you require them to answer a question, that'll just kill your conversion rate. And you can turn that off in your instant book settings in Airbnb. And then the final thing is, instant book. So make sure you have instant book turned on. And then the final thing is all caps warnings in your description. Scare people off really fast. Like, no parties or I'll sue you, like that. That's not going to be good for you. So those are kind of your 5 major sins. And if you do any of those, it's going to hurt your conversion rate in a big way.
Yeah, that was solid. I'm laughing because I see so many all caps like, this is a non-party house. You're like, okay, I get that. I don't want to party at my house either, but all caps, why are you yelling at me? Why are you yelling at me?
Yeah.
I love that one. That's a good one. It's like these little things, man, really do make a difference. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. Let's see. I think there's probably a few more questions. If you guys have anything to add, feel free to jump in, but I think we're getting pretty close. I have over 100 5-star bookings. More of them are competitors. However, I'm on page 14 of Airbnb. On AirDNA, I'm a 3rd in the highest revenue for my 2 bedrooms in my zip code. I played with my title, my photos, etc., but still doesn't seem to increase my page rank. I really don't.
I would be very careful with that because that's what I don't know who asked this question, but that's what he or she is seeing, right? Doesn't mean that that's what everybody else sees. Sometimes we have clients calling us up and say, I show up on page number 5. Well, I'm doing the search and you're showing up on page number 1. So let's not base ourselves on what you see or what I see. let's base ourselves on the actual data, right? And that's where, you go into IntelliHost or you go into Airbnb and you realize, okay, what percentage of the times am I showing up on the first page? And if you have numbers like 40, 45%, you're like, okay, great. If you're seeing numbers like 10%, you're like, okay, yes, whatever. Then you do have a problem and you have to make some changes.
Yep. And that's why we prefer first page impression, right, from Airbnb over rank, because rank is such a subjective metric. Because think about how many different ways people can search on Airbnb. They're searching for things like pool, they're searching for pricing, they're searching for, so the search result is different for every single customer. Most people aren't just going to your location, searching the bedroom filter, and then finding you in search, right? I mean, most people wouldn't even appear in the top 15 pages if that was the only filters they use. So it really depends on what filters people are actually using. And that's why you have to just go to Airbnb and say, okay, how many times did I get on first page and what percentage was that? And they'll tell you. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that, Eduardo.
And I'm going to wrap it up with this question because I get this question all the time. And I just thought of it with the way you guys were talking about all this stuff. Is there a way to track amenities? Because, obviously the industry is turning into a big, kind of like amenities battle. Who has the best amenities? Like, obviously a lot of people always talk about, is it worth buying a hot tub if I'm in the mountain area? Like, do you guys have any insights on amenities? And I know certain locations depend. Any insight on that, amenities?
I do. We have, so in about a week, we're going to be releasing a new recommendations function in IntelliHost. And what it's going to do is actually look at how many impressions you're getting, or sorry, it's going to look at how much lift you can get in impressions. So in top funnel impressions for specific amenities. So to look at your area and say, okay, for your city, people who have a pool on average get 10% above the median. So you can see which amenities drive the most traffic. Eventually, we'd like to tie that to revenue specifically, so you can see, exactly how much more, money, and you can calculate the ROI on a pool or a hot tub. But for now, we're kind of measuring that with traffic metrics. So keep an eye or watch out for that release to happen in the next 7 days or so, and we should be able to have more insights specific to you. I mean, we did a video on pools in general, and we looked at what's the impression benefit from having a pool, and I think it was like 40%, 45% increase in overall impressions for having a pool. Oh, shoot. Now I'm worried that I might be saying the wrong number, but it's a big one. So if you want to go look at our videos, you can see the overall impression benefit. But besides a pool, like, it's going to be pretty nuanced for your area, depending on what people are looking for. And yeah.
We've seen things like in Tulum, where people like to travel and it's not that close, and you don't travel with a lot of luggage. Having a hairdryer makes a big difference, right? That's what we've seen. So hairdryer for that specific location. So I can't wait to have that report, Jeff. It's certainly going to help our team as well. But one thing I would recommend to everyone is the list of amenities on all the OTAs continues to change and expand. So if you set up your amenities a year ago or a year and a half ago, and you're thinking like, oh, well, I did set them up, well, careful, because they keep adding things. And you always have to make sure that your listing is updated. I remember at some point in time, we had some listings that were not performing that well. And it's because VRBO had changed their definition. They had to split oceanfront from ocean view and oceanfront. And we had oceanfront flagged, but not ocean view, right? Of course, you can view the ocean if you're on oceanfront. But because we didn't have that, our ranking started dropping and we started getting less listings. And once we just checked that, we started getting more bookings again. So careful with that. Don't assume that the OTAs always have the same list of amenities. It's constantly evolving, constantly changing. So keep an eye on that and make sure that your listings are up to date.
Yeah. Moral of the story here is don't set it and forget it, and constantly be willing to learn and educate. This industry is still so young. Like, I can't even begin to tell you how much I just learned on this call myself, even, all these questions. So it's like, we're such in an early stage of this, but again, I just want to thank everybody for jumping on this call. We will send a follow-up email I don't know, maybe we need to do a series on this because there's a lot of other questions. If anybody has anything else to add real quick, but I definitely want you guys to do a shameless plug and kind of where can people find you? Where can they get more information if they want to reach out to you guys? Is that possible?
Sure. I mean, in our case, what we normally offer, if I'm just going to share here my screen, is we like to do audits because we like to have someone from our team actually go in and look at an actual listing of yours and tell you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. It's a 100-point score. And basically out of this audit, you basically realize, what should I be changing? What could I improve? So if you just scan that QR code, we'll be happy. Just leave us your information and someone from our team will be reaching out to you. And if you don't end up doing business with us, it will just still give you a ton of very interesting information for you to obtain. So drop us a line. We'll be happy to help.
Yeah, we love AngelHost. They have it well dialed in as far as all the property managers or owners we've worked with. They know their stuff. And for my own shameless plug, you can find us on IntelliHost.co. It's IntelliHost, IntelliHost.co. And we have a free 30-day trial if you'd like to go in and try it out. You can go in, you hook up your data, and to hook up your data, you just add us as a co-host or a team member, and you're good to go. And you can try out almost all the features with that free trial, and then decide how many properties you want to subscribe to.
Very cool.
Very
My
cool.
shameless plug, you can find me on Instagram, just John Hildebrand, YouTube. I'm always trying to interview people and learn as much as possible and spread whatever I learn to everybody else too. So, but again, thank you guys. This was super awesome, super motivating, and all kinds of great info. I'm sure a lot of people got a lot of value out of this. So thanks everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Anita. Perfect.